I've always been the kind of woman who senses when something's off, even if it's just a flicker of doubt in the air. Lately, though, it's been more than a flicker. It's a cold wind sweeping through what used to be our warm home. I see it in the little things, the way Mark's phone is always on silent now, how he avoids my eyes when I ask about his day, how he stares off into the distance as if he's somewhere else entirely. These small moments cling to me like shadows, and no matter how hard I try to shake them off, they only grow darker. At night, when everything is quiet, I lie awake tracing the patterns of his new distance, feeling the emptiness in the space where his warmth used to be. I don't want to believe what my gut is telling me, but deep down, I know I have to find out the truth. One evening, while Mark was in the shower and the bathroom steamed up around him, I found myself alone with our shared tablet. My hands shook as I picked it up, telling myself I was just checking the calendar, but I couldn't deny the pull of curiosity, the ache to know what he was hiding from me. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the apps, feeling like an intruder in my own life. I don't even remember how I got to the messages. It's like my fingers moved on their own, desperate for answers. And then there it was, a series of explicit texts and pictures that left no room for doubt. My stomach dropped as I read every word, each one cutting deeper than the last. I felt the blood rush to my face, a mix of rage and heartbreak threatening to swallow me whole. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a slap in the face, a cruel confirmation that the man I trusted had chosen someone else. For a moment, I thought I might be sick right there in the middle of our living room. But then I took a breath and wiped my tears, refusing to let this break me. I wouldn't let myself be the woman who just crumbled under the weight of her husband's lies. No, I was going to make Mark pay, not by confronting him with these messages tonight, but by turning this heartbreak into something he'd never see coming. The anger inside me didn't feel like weakness anymore. It felt like fuel, a spark that could ignite something powerful. I closed the tablet, my mind already racing with possibilities, my heart pounding with a new sense of purpose. I spent the rest of that night sitting in the darkness, the tablet clutched to my chest like a secret weapon. My mind was alive with questions. Who was this woman? How long had this been going on? And most of all, how was I going to make Mark pay? The pain still clawed at me, but there was something else growing inside me too, a fierce determination to take control of my own story. I refused to let this betrayal define me. If he thought he could humiliate me and walk away unscathed, he was about to find out just how wrong he was. By the time Mark came out of the shower, I had already decided on my next move. I forced a smile when he asked if everything was okay, and for a moment, I almost believed it myself. But I knew better. I knew that behind my calm facade, there was a plan forming, a storm building that he'd never see coming. I lay beside him in bed that night, pretending to sleep while my mind raced with thoughts of revenge and retribution. It was then I realized, if Mark wanted secrets, I could play that game too. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of resolve that felt almost electric. I knew I couldn't confront Mark directly. That would be too easy for him to dismiss, too easy for him to lie his way out of. No, I needed something bigger, something that would shatter the perfect image he'd worked so hard to build. And I knew exactly where to start. Tom. Mark's best friend, the one who had always been a little too attentive when I entered the room. Tom had a kindness in his eyes, a vulnerability that Mark had never even tried to understand. I decided to reach out to him under the guise of seeking comfort, hoping he'd see me as the wounded wife, desperate for answers. I crafted my message carefully, making sure every word dripped with just enough sadness to make him lean in. When he replied, his concern was immediate, his loyalty to Mark already starting to waver. It felt like a betrayal of my own, to use his feelings this way, but I reminded myself that this was war. I wasn't going to be the only one left in pieces when this was over. When Tom and I finally met up, I could see the worry in his eyes. It was almost disarming. We sat across from each other in a small coffee shop, the smell of roasted beans and warm pastries filling the air around us. I let my voice tremble as I spoke about Mark's distance, how I felt him slipping away. Tom listened so intently, his brow furrowed as he tried to piece together the puzzle. Every time he reached across the table to comfort me, I could feel his loyalty battling with something deeper, something he'd never dare admit out loud. I leaned into that conflict, letting my words blur the line between innocence and intention. He was torn, and I could see it plain as day. Part of him wanted to stay loyal to his friend, but another part, the part he tried so hard to hide, was drawn to me in a way he couldn't deny. I used that knowledge like a weapon, but I did it gently, almost sweetly. A smile here, a lingering touch there, just enough to make him wonder what it might feel like to be more than Mark's best friend. I told myself it wasn't about Tom at all. It was about getting to Mark and making sure he'd never forget the price of betrayal. As the conversation shifted, I could feel Tom's resolve starting to crumble. I didn't lay out every detail of what I had in mind. Not yet. Instead, I spoke in riddles and half-promises, enough to spark his imagination, but not enough to scare him away. I told him I needed his help to teach Mark a lesson, and that was all it took for a flicker of intrigue to light in his eyes. He hesitated, of course, his conscience pulling him back. But I could see he was already halfway mine. When we parted ways that night, I watched him walk away, his shoulders tense and his steps unsteady. I knew he was wrestling with himself, but I also knew he wouldn't be able to resist for long. The seed had been planted, and it was only a matter of time before it took root. As I closed the door behind me, a smile ghosted across my lips. I wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning. And as the night settled around me, I felt the spark of anticipation in my chest, ready to see just how far I could push this plan. I knew I couldn't rush this next step. With Tom, I had to be careful. Too much too soon, and he'd retreat back to the safety of his conscience. So I played my part slowly, weaving vulnerability and desire into every look, every touch. We met in hidden corners, places where no one would think to look. Each time we met, I let the tension build like a coiled spring, the space between us thick with unspoken questions. I'd brush my fingers against his arm and watch the way his breath caught, how his eyes searched mine for a sign he wasn't just imagining it. The game became almost intoxicating. The way he tried to hold himself back, the way he fought to stay loyal to Mark, but kept coming back for more. I could see it in the way he'd glance at me when he thought I wasn't looking, the flicker of something hungry in his eyes. And I fed that hunger, a little more each time, until it was all he could taste. Part of me wondered if I should feel guilty, but the thought vanished as quickly as it came. I reminded myself, this wasn't about love, it was about power. It was about taking back the pieces of myself that Mark had tried to steal. The night it finally happened felt like it had been written in the stars. Tom and I had danced around each other long enough, the air between us practically crackling every time we got close. I invited him over under the pretense of needing someone to talk to, my voice soft and uncertain. When he walked through the door, his eyes were wary, but there was a heat there too, a silent confession neither of us had to put into words. I led him to the couch, my hand brushing his as I sat down beside him, feeling the electric pulse of possibility. It didn't take much, just a look, a whispered promise in the darkness. And he was mine. Our lips met like we'd been waiting forever, and in that moment, I felt a rush of vindication that drowned out everything else. I let him lose himself in me, let him believe for that night that he was the only one who mattered. But even as my heart raced and the world spun around us, I kept my focus sharp. This was my plan, my revenge, and I wasn't about to let it slip through my fingers. I made sure to leave traces, little reminders of what had happened, because I knew I'd need them soon enough. When it was over, Tom lay beside me, his breathing ragged and his fingers tangled in mine. In the quiet aftermath, he looked at me like he was trying to find answers in the curve of my smile, but I gave him nothing. I let him believe that what we had was more than a weapon, that it was something real, even if only for a fleeting moment. As he drifted off to sleep, I slipped out of bed and gathered the evidence I needed. A stray shirt here, a lipstick-smeared glass there, each piece carefully curated to become part of my arsenal. In that moment, I felt a surge of power I hadn't known I was capable of. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was in control. The guilt that had once threatened to weigh me down was gone, replaced by a cold, exhilarating clarity. I knew Tom wouldn't stay silent for long. His conscience wouldn't let him, but that was all part of the plan. I needed him to feel torn, to feel trapped, because it would only make what came next even more devastating. As I slipped out into the night, my heart was steady and my mind was clear. I was ready for the next move. The night of the dinner party arrived, and I felt a calm settle over me like a second skin. I moved through the house with practiced ease, setting the table with the fine china we rarely used, the polished silver glinting under the warm light. Every detail was perfect, every piece exactly where it needed to be. I watched Mark as he fussed with his tie, his smile forced and his eyes darting around the room. He didn't know what was coming, and that made every second sweeter. I could almost taste the tension, like a bitter note beneath the laughter and the soft clinking of glasses. Our friends arrived one by one, their voices rising in a chorus of easy banter and shared memories. I greeted each of them with warmth, weaving myself into the rhythm of the evening. But underneath the laughter, my mind was sharp, every sense attuned to the undercurrent swirling around us. I could see Mark's eyes flick to mine every so often, searching for a sign that everything was normal. I gave him nothing but warmth, letting him think this was just another dinner, just another night in our perfect life. He had no idea that everything he'd built was about to come crashing down around him. As the night wore on, I let the conversation flow around me like a gentle current. I laughed at the right moments, toasted to memories and half-truths, all the while feeling the weight of what I was about to do pressing down on my chest. Mark kept reaching for my hand under the table, his thumb tracing idle circles on my skin. I let him, pretending to be the doting wife he thought he still had. The irony of it all made my smile almost too easy to hold. Every time our eyes met, I felt the secret burning between us, a secret he didn't even know he was part of. Tom was there too, of course, his smile tight and his eyes flickering with a mix of guilt and anticipation. I could feel his tension across the table, the way he couldn't quite meet my gaze for more than a second. It was perfect. I wanted him to feel the weight of what we'd done, to know that he was as much a part of this as I was. The whole night felt like a performance, and I was the only one who knew how the final act would end. My heart raced with the thrill of it all, my mind already rehearsing the lines I would deliver when the time was right. When the moment finally came, I rose from my seat, my glass in hand, and a smile that felt almost too bright. The room went quiet, the laughter dying away as everyone turned to me. I took a breath, feeling the electricity of the moment settle in my bones. "Before we raise another toast," I said, my voice steady and clear, "there's something I think you all deserve to see." I watched Mark's face pale, confusion and fear battling in his eyes. Tom shifted in his seat, his knuckles white around his fork. The silence was a living thing, pressing in on all of us. I reached for my phone, the video already queued up and ready to play. My hands didn't even shake as I pressed the screen and let the footage fill the room. Gasps erupted around the table as the images played, the proof of Mark's betrayal and my own calculated revenge. I didn't look at Mark as his world fell apart. I didn't need to. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. I could feel the weight lift off my shoulders, replaced by a cold, steady calm. This was the moment I'd been building toward, and I felt every bit as powerful as I'd imagined. The room was so quiet after the video ended that I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my chest. Everyone stared at Mark, their faces a mix of shock, pity, and something else. Something like disgust. I watched him try to find the right words, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. But there were no words for this, no excuses that could make any of it go away. I stood there, feeling a calm I hadn't known in months. It was like I'd been holding my breath this whole time, and finally, I could let it out. Tom sat there frozen, his face pale and his eyes wide with the reality of what he'd been a part of. I could see the guilt written in every line of his face, but I didn't feel sorry for him. He'd played his part just like I had, and now he had to live with that. My friends looked at me with a mix of awe and uncertainty, like they were seeing me for the first time. Maybe they were, because in that moment, I wasn't the woman who'd been betrayed. I was the woman who'd taken back her power, who'd refused to let someone else's lies become her story. After the dinner, I walked out into the night with my head held high, feeling the weight of everything I'd just done settling around me like a cloak. Mark didn't follow me. He just sat there, broken and silent, and that was enough for me. I didn't feel sorry for him, not even a little. He'd made his choices, and now he was living with the fallout. As for me, I felt a strange sense of freedom in the chaos I'd created. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself I'd almost forgotten. In the days that followed, I moved through the wreckage with a steady calm. I ended my marriage on my own terms, not with tears or apologies, but with a clear head and a strong heart. I packed up my things and left behind the pieces of a life that no longer felt like mine. There was pain, of course. How could there not be? But there was also something else. A quiet, steady sense of self that I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Now, when I look back at that night, I don't see the betrayal or the heartbreak. I see the moment I chose myself. I see the woman who refused to let a man's lies define her, who turned her pain into something sharp and unstoppable. There's a part of me that still wonders how it all came to this, but I don't regret a single step I took. Every choice, every calculated risk, brought me back to a place of power I thought I'd lost. And that's worth everything. I'm not naive enough to think the road ahead will be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to walk it. I've let go of the weight of pretending, of living in someone else's shadow. And in its place, I found something better, a fierce, unwavering belief in myself. That's what this was really about in the end. Not just revenge, but liberation. I don't know what's waiting for me beyond this, but I'm ready to find out. And that, more than anything, is the sweetest victory of all.